We make mistakes because we can. Our systems and our environment allows it. Okay. For example, when I work in companies, I make sure that the work environment is appropriate because I cannot change human condition, but I can change the conditions in which humans work. I can do that.
Welcome to Mind My Age, presented by Total Life. I'm your host, Neelam Brar. Today we have an extraordinary guest, Dr. Ginette Collazo, an expert in human error reduction and cognitive performance. We're diving into the fascinating world of human behavior, productivity, and how understanding our errors can transform our health and daily habits. Let's talk about human error. Can you break down the most common types of errors we make daily and their unseen impacts on our day-to-day and possibly our health?
Most of the times in daily life, I remember I work with industries and I talk about a lot of things that have to do with performance, like memory, concentration, cognitive load, all of these things that create conditions to make mistakes in the workplace. Now, if we're talking about your life, the most common things that where we make mistakes in is in decision making. And the reason for that is because there is a lot of emotional elements that play in the process of decision making. And if we're not very aware, we might be making decisions with emotions more than our heads. And that's one thing that we see over and over again. I mean, it happens at work and it happens in real life.
What are some tips to reduce emotional decision making?
First, take the time to sleep on it. And I'm going to use me as an example. I'm very impulsive, and I go to see a car, and they say a lot of things, and I end up leaving with the car. But that's not what's supposed to happen, and you learn that over the time. You want to remove the emotional side. Now, here's the thing: sometimes we don't understand, or we are not even aware what could be affecting from an emotional standpoint. So in this case, I really recommend having a neutral type of opinion, and my recommendation is always going to be therapy. In terms of friends and family, people have a lot of things that they can say, and a lot of they want to help you, but not necessarily they have the tools. If you're going to make a decision that it's non-recoverable, that it's something that it's very important, make sure you have all the details, all the facts. Another thing that helps a lot is to make a list. Make a list of the things that are non-negotiable for you when you're making a decision.
Remove yourself from that situation, remove the emotion, make a list of the non-negotiables. What else?
And also make sure that the non-negotiables are really non-negotiables. Because people say this is not negotiable, but then when things go well, then we can do that. Then we can adjust to it. So make sure it's really non-negotiable. Another thing that happens a lot with decision making is the lack of, let me see, how can I say this? The lack of courage to give up. And let me explain this. Sometimes we make a decision and we're going to do certain things, right? And we start doing them. And at some point we see that it's not really working. But we might think, you know what, I've spent so much time on this. I've invested so much money. So I'm just going to finish. I'm gonna, and in reality, sometimes you just have to let go certain things, especially that cost fallacy decision-making process. So sometimes we do have to remove ourselves from maybe unrealistic results, but we always have hope.
In your book, Human Error, Root Cause Determination Model, you explore these concepts in depth. How does this model help in understanding and mitigating errors in everyday life?
We make mistakes because we can. Our systems and our environment allows it. Okay. For example, when I work in companies, I make sure that the work environment is appropriate because I cannot change human condition, but I can change the conditions in which humans work. I can do that. Understanding humans And human performance allows us to say you have to make sure that people have enough space. You have to make sure that people have enough time. You have to make sure that people are not multitasking, which is impossible for humans, even though a lot of people think that we can do a lot of things at the same time. It doesn't work like that. It's totally linear and we might forget things. So it's not like concurrent or anything like that. So there are a lot of things that we can do. So in terms of the environment, what you want to do is design for your own environment.
As a daughter of aging parents, I'm constantly thinking about what can I be changing in their environment so that they're more likely to make good decisions. And
Yeah,
in fact,
and not only that, we want people to do things right without even noticing. So another thing that we really recommend is creating new habits. And those things we can do consciously. If I want to make sure that every time I close the drawer, for example, because I and I don't know why, but it happens. A lot of people can't. My daughter, she goes to the kitchen and she starts opening everything. But when she hears me that I'm coming, she's like closing everything because sometimes we think that, oh my God, that's not something that is going to make a difference. Or you're always thinking something bad is going to happen. No, it's not being negative or that something bad is going to happen. It's about risk assessment. And there are many moments in which we should assess the risk. And when we're talking about human error, we cannot say, don't be negative, don't put that in the universe. No, it is in the universe. What we're trying to see is make sure that we can predict what could go wrong and then believe that it might go wrong and protect ourselves and put barriers of defense or anything like that. So that's more or less what we talk about. There are other things like, for example, and you mentioned, we were talking earlier, you talked about the checklists, right? And there are very good, especially with memory. We have lost almost 50% of our memory capacity in the last 10 years. And it has to do with the fact that we are delegating our memory to gadgets, to smartphones, smart TVs, smart watches, smart calendars. Everything is getting smarter, but we are not necessarily getting better memory because we're not using it. When you don't use a skill for a long time, you might forget. And actually, I've heard about people that say one skill, once you learn how to run a bike, then you won't forget. I want all of you to know that's totally fake. I knew how to ride a bike and I had an accident the other day. It was like, you know what? No, I'm not riding a bike anymore because when with time you do lose certain type of skills. It does. When it comes to memory, we should understand that we cannot trust memory. If you're going to be doing something that is very critical, you don't want to trust your memory. You want to do a checklist. You want to do something that will have a reminder because we are not good with memory. Another thing is detection. We trust a lot what we see, and we see a lot of things that are not there. And sometimes we don't see what's there. And that's another thing that we need to not trust ourselves and then do it once or twice and so forth. No, I don't know if there is a particular situation that you have seen in your practice that will be something that is common that you see.
one of the common challenges that we're seeing with older adults that are working with Total Life is that they're navigating something new, like a massive transition, whether it is your entire livelihood changing through retirement, a new diagnosis that you now have to adjust your food, your sleep, your diet, your exercise, everything changes all of a sudden. If there are tips that our listeners could be thinking about, both for themselves or for their parents or grandparents, what would some of those tips be?
Yeah, we know that life has a lot of changes that we are going to go through in our life, but the one that you're talking about is a very big change. It's basically your whole lifestyle, and it could be very overwhelming. And when you're overwhelmed, you paralyze. And when you paralyze, you don't do the things that you need to do. But the reason why we're paralyzed is because we don't know where to start. And one of the things that I usually recommend in these cases is that you do a list of the things that you can do do one a day and then check that you did it.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Collazo. This has been incredibly insightful. Listeners, if you're inspired by today's conversation, visit totallife.com to learn more about coaching and therapy to help you age well. Remember, it's never too late to start taking care of your mental health and thereby your physical health. So stay engaged, stay mindful, stay healthy, and keep thriving. Until next time, this is Neelam Brar signing off.